Welcome, everyone, to our webinar on the impacts of redemptive entrepreneurship. Having grown up in Congo and Kenya as a missionary kid, this topic is very close to my heart. Growing up poor negatively altered my perception of possibilities, but in Canada, we have resources to help find jobs or launch our own companies, which I did in 1992. In trips back to Africa, we have seen increased growth in dependence on foreign funds, and research shows that this has a drastic negative impact on communities and future generations. Although it's getting better, we need entrepreneurs and business professionals to come alongside charities and nonprofits and together provide sustainable training and business skills to help empower our global communities. To start off our conversation, I'm going to introduce you to Peter Robelin. After 30 years of pastoral ministry in the local church, Peter Robelin has spent the last 10 years as the president of Charis Foundation, which seeks to bring hope and healing to the world in the name of Jesus Christ. TFC equips and resources charities to fulfill their vision and mission in Canada and around the world. Peter is keenly interested in seeing the principles of redemptive entrepreneurship applied as corrective measure to the historic charity model and seeing redemptive businesses and charitable organizations working together for the renewal of all things. Peter, I will drop it over to you.
Thanks, Ruth. Great to be here with you all today. And I have the task of just briefly introducing the concept of redemptive entrepreneurship. And then I think that will kind of get expanded as each panelist shares a little bit. So redemptive entrepreneurship is a phrase that I first heard from an organization called Praxis, which is based in the state of New York. And they are a very strong advocate for doing business redemptively. And among other things, they've developed an incubator and an accelerator for redemptive entrepreneurs. Praxis supports founders and funders and innovators that are motivated by their faith to love their neighbors and try to renew culture. And at the heart of what Praxis does is what they call their redemptive frame, so that everything gets colored and activated through this particular lens and frame. And they perceive that there are three ways of doing work. There's the exploitative way, the ethical way, and the redemptive way. And the exploitative way is where the bottom line is the main thing. It's the primary motivation of the business leaders to maximize profits for themselves, their shareholders, their investors, with little thought about whether the business venture itself is good for the employees or the customers or the broader community or creation. The next level up from that is the ethical way of working. And this is where most companies want to be these days. They want to be seen as doing no harm. They want to be seen as treating their employees fairly and of not being connected with suppliers that might be using bonded workers or child labor. They want to be seen as having an eco or a green posture and perhaps being connected to a good charitable cause. And all of this is really good. It's a good step up from the exploitative. But then there's a completely another level, and that's the redemptive way, which is far beyond doing no harm, but actually being a blessing and being restorative to everything it touches. So the business is good not only for the owners and the founders and the funders, it's making money, but it's also good for the employees and for the customers and for the broader community and for God's creation. And this can't happen without some sacrifice along the way. Sacrifice for the sake of and the good of the other. And it's these kinds of business ventures that many of us believe simply have to be part of God's plan to renew all things. The current charity model just isn't bringing the hope and healing that we long for in our broken world. Redemptive businesses need to be part of this picture, hopefully working hand in hand with the church and with existing charitable organizations, but they certainly need to be a big part of this picture. And if this phrase, redemptive entrepreneurship, is new to you, perhaps you've heard redemptive business or kingdom ventures or business for good or social enterprises. Those are all terms that are being bandied about these days. I really like redemptive entrepreneurship because I think it's a very powerful and a more accurate description of what we're hoping for. And I think we're going to hear a lot of these redemptive themes emerging from our panelists in the next hour. So Ruth, back to you.
All right. Well, I would like to introduce to you Bruce Taylor. He is the founder of EnviroStewards, which is a best for the world classified B Corporation, recipient of Global Compact Canada's SDG Goal Award, and the only Canadian company to win a Global SDG Award. EnviroStewards sustainability engineering work has worked with Campbell's Soup, Southbrook Winery, Andrew Peller, Maple Lodge, Dextran, North York General Hospital, 50 Food Processors, and Tim Hortons, several of these projects have won multiple awards. Bruce also founded the Safe Water Project in South Sudan that has won an International Globe Award and was featured in Be the Change magazine, Meta magazine, and a TEDx talk. Bruce, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Ruth. And thank you, everybody, for sharing us this evening. This is an exciting topic, and I thank you for organizing it. So I'm going to just walk you through a bit of my personal journey, both individually as a corporation and how we do our work. And the payoff would eventually be durable prosperity for folks. We're a living wage employer, water efficient, carbon efficient, net zero. We designed a system that recycled the water for the space shuttles, booster rockets, that kind of thing. But this is our team. We're about 15 people, just north of Waterloo, Ontario. We say that we cultivate resilient business and improve lives. I'll show you a bit about how we do that. So, for example, Maple Leaf Foods is the first large food company in the world to be carbon neutral. Well, that must have cost them a lot of money. No, actually, they're saving money because of the way we went about it was to go to 35 factories, show them how to use less energy in the first place so that they could then be zero. So that's their Super Bowl commercial. They also sponsored water filters through our project over in East Africa for each of the projects, and that's this part of the work. As Ruth mentioned, we have a TED Talk on it if you ever have 13 minutes on the whole topic of development versus relief. We're building those things in the middle. I'll show you a bit more about that later on. And so my personal journey. So, you know, here's me, grade 7, so interested in science and math and camp counseling and that kind of stuff. So what am I going to do? So I figured, well, if I go into engineering, I can always go into something else from that, but it's hard to go the other way. And I can always do counseling or whatever on the side, but it's hard to do engineering on the side. So I went to UW, took Chem Eng, and after I graduated, I had what I call a pre-life crisis. So, you know, why are we on the planet? You know, these kinds of things. And so after about 2 years, I came to a faith position myself where I believe that Jesus is God, basically. And so then what do I do at work? So should I leave and do ministry? No, I felt I should keep doing what I'm doing. And so then, but it became a source of friction. Like I would take leaves of absence and be penalized in different ways. So eventually the type of company I wanted to work for didn't exist. So I had to create it. And so that's why I established EnviroStewards. And so with respect to ourselves, we cut our own footprint so that we can, you know, put our own house in order. So we've cut our own footprint 78% per employee, and then we offset twice the rest kind of thing with different ways. We harvest the rainwater, reuse it. We haven't bought water in 5 years for the living wall, that kind of thing. But a big area of impact for us is this, like food loss. So 1/3 of all the food on the planet is wasted right now. And if it was a country, it'd be the 3rd largest after China and the States would be wasted food. It'd be the 2nd largest water consumer on the planet, and $49 billion, $1 trillion worldwide in lost value. Now, all the effort is how do we divert that to composting and biogenerate? If you succeed at diverting 100% of it, you still waste 1/3 of the food. It's still the 3rd largest greenhouse gas, and you still lose most of that money. The only way to not do that is to reduce the loss in the first place. And so we've demonstrated that over and over. We have another talk tomorrow on that. on this important topic of how do you, because it's social, it's economic, and it's environmental, right? But then climate justice. So all of us on the call would say that we're opposed to colonialism, we're opposed to racism. But what happens is all of us were born into systems that actually were based on that. And we don't actually notice it, right, because of that. And so our office in Elmira is located on land that was literally stolen from other people, right? It was actually leased for 1,000 years, but nobody's ever paid the lease. So we've actually offered to voluntarily pay the lease for the land we're sitting on, and we're waiting for a response or whatever. But basically, people don't need these handouts if we actually treated them with the respect that is due them in the first place. So basically, it's these systems we have to look at and rethink. And again, I'm trying to help, right? The problem must be with other people. But the trouble is, you've heard the expression, though, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's not actually biblical per se, but it's interesting. I used to think that it meant that you meant to do something good and you didn't. Actually, it also means that you did what you intended to do and it had unintended consequence. And that's what we find in our development work in East Africa. And so it comes down to, if we were to ask most Canadians what poverty is, you're going to give an answer something like a lack of money and stuff. So obviously, if you want to solve poverty, it's money and stuff, right? But if you ask somebody who's in poverty, they're going to give you an answer more like, I have no power to change my situation. These things aren't solved with money and stuff. They're actually made worse by coming in and doing that. And so we're solving the wrong problem. So we're going about solving it the wrong way. So here's what we developed during COVID is we've been developing these materials on our own. So we've been doing this since 2007 in South Sudan and Uganda and a slum of Kenya. So in some of the difficult places to do it. And so our next area to scale our impact is actually to help other people do it themselves. So all of our materials are now being offered online for free. Anybody can download and do their own project. So module 1, how to actually do it. So if you've been anywhere, you've got all these requests for projects, and all of them are very good at this is how much it would cost to do it, but very poor at this is the revenue and this is how it's going to match. So we teach people how to do that. So in this module 1, it's all available online under safewatersocialventures.org. But basically in here, you see this blue line, that's the fixed cost that any project has to come up with every month or else they're dead, right? That's your wages and your rent and that kind of stuff, right? The yellow line is the incremental cost. So every time they make one of these water filters, it costs them that. If you add those together, you get the gray line. And then you've got your yellow line is your sales. So until your sales reaches like 27, you're actually losing money every month. You'll survive for a while, but your project will close. If you're above that, then you can reinvest, you can do other things. So helping people understand this and then develop that into a business plan to make sure you got a viable project there in the first place. Then module 2 is technical training. So how do you actually make these water purifiers? So we teach the local people there how to build it themselves with the local materials. And interestingly, we haven't really taught it since 2007 because they've got it and they teach the next group and they teach the next group, they teach the next group, right? You can make this thing for under $100 US. Then we teach them how to run a business, right? And so we have a board game. What you see there is version 2 of the game. We're developing version 3, which will be a Zoom version where literally you're running this water project virtually together and you're running the same problems in real life. And it'll have a version 3, you'll have a game mode and a real life mode where you switch it over. Now you're helping to run your project with this board game. Then how do you sell these things, right? So I've been drinking water for free. Why would I buy this thing? Well, is it really free if you get sick? So basically we teach the local people how to sell them. So when they're after a 3-day course, they know about water-related illnesses. They can teach the homeowners about how it's transmitted, the barriers, that kind of thing, how the water filters work, then how it's actually cheaper to buy it than what they're already spending on the unsafe water illnesses. So for example, this lady here, Betty, 7 people in her family had typhoid that year. So she spent over almost $500, even though a water filter would have been $100 and lasted 25 years for the whole family. So you can't actually get out of poverty if you can get hit with a bill like that at any time. So it's actually poverty reduction, right? So sales agent. The final, unfortunately, we also have to make this module, is how do you keep conventional charities, including Christian charities, from killing you by mistake? When we moved to Uganda from South Sudan, a Christian charity literally killed our project. They didn't intend to, but we haven't sold a filter in that town since, because they came in and they said, well, this is a great project. The project was already breaking even the first month. They bought 300 and they wanted to give them away for free around town without discriminating who gets a free one and who doesn't. And what happens is there's 47,000 people who don't have town. But why would you buy one if they might come back with more free ones? So unless you have one for everybody in town, don't pretend that you do. But our whole charity system is based on this kind of savior mentality where, we do have a savior, but it's not us, right? And so that's why I'm encouraging in the TED Talk to kind of rethink the whole thing, where you're not going to get this with conventional model. Erasmus is our first customer. He's proud, he's providing for his family. On the right, that's Godfrey. He's proud, he's selling the filter, and he's providing for his employees. And behind that's the guy from the local government who can't provide safe water to anybody, but he's just happy that it's happening. So you can't get this respect for dignity with a conventional model. And that's why we adopt this and we empower other people to do it.
Very much, Bruce. Joanna, we're going to move the discussion over to you. Joanna is the founder of Devarium Design. She spent 3 decades at IBM, culminating in a 7-year tenure as head of research and director of the Center for Advanced Studies, IBM Canada Lab. In 2018, she pivoted to innovate in Devarium, an entrepreneurial startup setting where Joanna continues her work in AI, integrating with IoT and blockchain, focusing on augmented cognition, and applying her design thinking methods to all of it. Her niche is translating complex abstractions and theories into useful solutions. She has been granted 45 patents, which I think is pretty crazy and amazing, by the US and other countries, with 11 additional patents filed. And Joanna has co-authored 2 computer science books with Springer, The Smart Internet in 2010 and The Personal Web 2013, and also published and co-authored over 20 peer-reviewed academic papers. Since leaving IBM, Joanna has also founded COE, Kingdom on Earth Ministry, which provides studies around integrating faith and work. Joanna, I'll pass it over to you. You have to go off mute.
All right, thank you, Ruth. It's very humbling to transition from being a technologist in IBM into a entrepreneur, running a business and learning to run it in a redemptive way. So here's my company logo, Devarium Design. Devarium is a Hebrew word, which is God speak. So when God speak, I design, and that's how that 45 pattern intervened with God's idea. And I have to do the Daniel thing, which is if it is not your credit, if it is God's credit, don't take it, give him the credit. So that's how I have been working as a technologist and now transitioning into a business. So this logo, if you can you see 2 Ds in it? Devarium Design, there's 2 Ds in it. And it's also a Chinese character of door. This is the Chinese character of door, which I think this is where the season God is taking me into. So for me, redemption is very, very much end-to-end, coming from a technology field. We all know that because of sin, the evil one wants to kill, steal, and destroy. Jesus say, I'm here to give you life and give you abundantly. That is the scale of end-to-end redemption. And in the purpose of work, it includes redeeming the purpose God originally created us. We read in Psalm 139 that when God created us, before he even put us into the mother's womb, he had an intention for us. And that intention was stolen. And now because of Christ, part of living in that abundant life is to redeem that original intention God has for for each of our life. And that include redeeming the purpose, redeeming the days of our life, and redeeming the work of our hands that has eternal significance. And I think that is the very much end-to-end scales of redemption. So coming from a tech world, tech has a very toxic culture from various reasons. I think the top two, one is, which was what Peter talked about, which is the maximizing of the profit. And the other one that came from the whole cutthroat competitiveness. Okay, so I have 45 patents. For each patent, it means that you are the first of every one of your competitors. So I remember filing a patent. IBM was just, half a day faster than the Microsoft, and that competitiveness is very, very much toxic, because all the fear of being not the first induce a lot of bad behavior. So one of my major calling right now is to offer an alternative that it doesn't have to be that way. An alternative that you don't have to steal other people's idea. The alternative that you can be in an entrepreneur culture, that you can create a space where God's kingdom is to honor each other's purpose in life, that the fact that you are successful, I can celebrate, because it doesn't mean I can't be successful in my own way, because God's kingdom is abundant, it's multiplying. And so I try to do that within IBM, and it's a lot harder because it's not your company. As much as I even work with HR in headquarters, it doesn't mean you can set your own culture. And so now, like my aspiration now is that as I'm starting to form this company, that is definitely one of the goal is to create that culture, to prove and to offer an alternative in the tech world that are so used to this toxic company culture, that you can be creative in a tech space, but you don't have to live like that because of the redemption that God has for each one of us. And so I've also mentored a lot of technologists in Facebook, in Google, living in Silicon Valley, through this Kingdom on Earth ministry. There is a special group that are for the tech Christian who live through this, right? The kind of discussion that we are talking about is like, okay, he stole my idea, so what should I do? Or I have this idea, how can I do it so that it can be redemptive and not kill each other? And so we have those very, very cutthroat discussion. And how do you rely on God? What is the Holy Spirit saying? Hearing the Holy Spirit, seeing things in a different perspective. And so we have this tech COE group for the tech community with technologists from across countries in Silicon Valley, in Canada, and some of them are in Australia. Because of believing in that redemptive nature, that if it wasn't for Jesus, there is no alternative. But with Jesus, we are here to provide that alternative, that we want people to see that as a CEO, that I don't take the bonus that I need to take by laying off people to take the bonus. I can stop taking the bonus and share the success with everyone involved in this project. So that is very much in the cooking. So what is my space? So let's take a look at the big picture. We are already in the fifth industrial revolution, and this is real. Okay, so the second industrial revolution, the world is changed because of electricity. The third industrial revolution, the world is changed because everyone have access to computer. And so before we finish talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we are actually in the fifth, because there's so much happening right now. Apart from Internet of Things, automation, big data, having cybersecurity technology, then there are there's a convergence of major technology forces that are putting together that in the next 4 or 5 years, or even 3 to 5 years, that the world will be fundamentally changed because of all this enablement, because that there is so easy that a point-to-point communication can transform healthcare, transform insurance industry. And it is already happening. So 30 years ago, we had the internet, and this is a 2014 picture, I believe, that when Facebook was first formed, very quickly people figured it out. It's like, how come I use such useful platform like Facebook and I don't have to pay for it? And here's the cartoon that's been there for ever since Facebook existed, that people very quickly figured out if it was great and we don't have to pay for it, then we are the product, which is exactly the case. Right now in the internet, for all the free things from Google to Facebook, because we are all depending on Google. We use Google Map. We can't live without Google. Google become a verb that kids know. And Facebook, depending on, there's a lot more alternatives now, but at the end of the day, it's still the same, because they don't charge us. And now they've collected billion of user database. It become the gold mine of advertisement. And that's how now, Facebook, Apple, Google, and Amazon become the richest company in the world, because they are selling our data. And we all, if you haven't seen Social Dilemma, go and see it, because now it's getting out of control. Because even Mark Zuckerberg and the CEO of Google has been constantly been summoned to Congress to discuss how can you stop fake news from going around, because there's algorithm that would pick the sensational feed so that you are addicted to these feed that are free, right? And we are the product. Can be sold to sway one political position to another, and so I would describe the technology platform right now as like, okay, we are in the film industry. You can make whatever film you want, but the whole governance of PG-13 and the whole governance of what is R-rated hasn't come to place. This is exactly where internet is at right now. So you will hear a lot more government like Australia trying to provide some governance to stop this from going on for social good. So the convergence comes from all these things coming together. 5G will IoT, blockchain, AI, and Internet 2.0. The reason why these are all coming together, and there's actually a couple more like cybersecurity and also quantum computer. All these are coming together that would change the world. It just so happened that it's all coming together. It's not that someone orchestrated coming together, but it's just different technologies work on different things and they're all coming together. And so, for example, 5G, it means that I can agilely form a network and be able to transact data, maybe my personal health record, only to this specialist in an agile way, using the cell phone network in a safe way, through blockchain that there is a trace, right? And then through AI, so it's automated. So all these things are coming together. Now, the reason why this is interesting is that I think a few years ago, I think about three, 4 years ago, the creator of internet, Sir Tom Berners-Lee, very regret the fact that the internet data was being exploited to the point that we have no control. So basically, he and his team is working on Internet 2.0 and say that we are going to put infrastructure in place so that there is an alternative. And the infrastructure in place is called the data vault. And so that it's like the way to think about it is like, okay, we are in the first generation car and everybody has to drive standard. You have to shift 5 gear within 2 seconds if you want to pick up your speed. And that's where everybody is. You have no choice because this is the only thing offered. And what Tim Berners-Lee and his team was trying to do is to say, no, well, we can make the world internet better by providing some enablement like data vault. So it's in the car industry, it's like you now can have a automatic car, so you don't have to drive standard. So basically what Tim Berners-Lee was saying is that you can have a data vault so that you take back your data and that in your own choosing, you can share it with an individual platform. And you can also contribute to the common good, that if this is a health data, you can share your data in an anonymous way. And if I were a cancer patient, I can anonymously contribute to the common good so that there's enough big data to study cure for cancer. So all these are happening right now. And so my area of work in my business is to create a augmented cognitive assistance that own your own data so that you have a control of your own data that would have analytics to do things for you that are helping to relieve your cognitive load. So that's basically, and the first application will be in healthcare. So wisdom from the past, this is happening. And we take this analogy from film. 1895 is the first patent. And it was the greatest thing. What happened at the time? 1895 was the first invention of film. It was 50 seconds long. No film can be longer than 50 seconds long as it first introduced. It's only black and white with no sound. But that was the greatest entertainment at the time because you have no other choice. Then fast forward to 1903, then you start having color, you start having a longer film, you can now associate sound with it, synchronizing with the image. That's the second generation invention. And the reason I use this as an analogy is that the situation that I told you about, that we are the product, is like the 1895, like that's all we have right now. Like the 15-second film, black and white with no sound, is the greatest thing on earth, we thought. And then until some more enablement was added, that, oh, okay, film now has color, film now can synchronize with sound, film now is not limited to 50 seconds. And so equating that to the internet, what I'm working with other technologists right now is to say, okay, no one can claim their data and you have no choice. That's your 50-second film. And what we are inventing right now is that, no, that cannot be. Everyone can have a data vault that I can take my data back and I have a choice what I want to share and what I don't want to share. And that's basically the new business that I'm in, a little bit technology risky, but I think it's doing a common good, because then someone say, data is like your blood, it's yours. Why should I give it to you without you even asking me. And so that's a very interesting new area that I'm working on. And while I'm doing that, I'm hoping to set up a business that is redemptive, not only that the product is redemptive, but hopefully the company itself is redemptive. Back to you, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and also for the quick education on some of what's happening. I want to introduce you to James Wooler. He has worked internationally in many different cultures, projects, and development programs focusing on poverty alleviation. The last 10 years, he ventured into business and is co-owner of 3 service-related businesses in Vancouver, BC. In 2018, he became the International Executive Director of Thrive for Good and draws on his fast-paced, scalable growth business experience to spearhead change. He is an inspiring and high-integrity, disciplined, result-driven professional with experience working in positions that require team leadership. His critical thinking and strategic planning enable him to scope complex challenges with proven results and of moving an organization forward. He lives in Vernon, BC with his South African wife, and 3 children. James, it's over to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Will have to say, Joanna, I have not a single patent to my name. So I have a lot of catch up. So I first want to start out with kind of a working concept, not even definition, a working concept of entrepreneur. 2 words come to mind and they're most commonly used. And entrepreneurs, they innovate. And second of all, they take risks. And I've learned over the years, I am so passionate about entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about entrepreneurs. As I thought over the last couple of weeks, kind of preparing and just kind of, filtering through what I wanted to talk about, I realized how many times in my life God has intersected, bringing entrepreneurs part of a journey, part of a discussion, part of a camaraderie. And I've just realized it's kind of part of the DNA and how much entrepreneurs are part of God's kingdom. So ever since I was 6 years old, I grew up in Midwestern America. And ever since I was 6, I was engaged in entrepreneurial activities. I would collect Buckeye nuts from a tree. And if you know Midwestern America, Ohio has a few Buckeyes. And I would collect them, crack them, polish them, and go door to door selling Buckeyes. And it was just, then after that, I started pushing a lawnmower around the neighborhood. And my parents actually loaned me money for my first lawnmower. And it kind of culminated over years of a decade. I had quite a burgeoning, large lawn mowing business. And I'm going to come back to this key point of how my parents loaned me money. I think it was then that I realized it's part of my DNA and who I am and how God made me. And I think that's how it is, with entrepreneurship. But what kind of happened over kind of, my journey here in life and lots of different entrepreneurial engagements, I often felt misunderstood. I felt lonely in my journey. And to be completely honest, I felt disconnected. I felt disconnected from church and kingdom. And I think as I kind of opened up and would share and discuss this, I found a lot of others that were in very similar journeys. And I started honestly seeing how as Christians, as church, and as kingdom, we've kind of, made entrepreneurs outcast as a little bit, as this greedy business owner. At the age of 25, I was, after graduating university, I was working with a social enterprise and actually moved to Swaziland and was living in Swaziland where I met my South African wife. And it was a social enterprise in the way that we would start medium-sized businesses, employ, local community members, and then the profits and proceeds from our businesses would go to community development. And while I was in Bulembu in Swaziland, I met so many, time after time again, passionate, caring, transformative business leaders from North America that would come to our project and they would share their struggles and their journey as entrepreneurs and kind of open up campfire talks, about just wanting to make a difference, wanting to be part of God's kingdom. And one Sunday, I actually, one entrepreneur was invited to speak at a Sunday church, just like this weekend with Easter Sunday. And he spoke and he talked about Joseph of Arimathea and the tomb. And he talked about, what would have happened with the burial process in Christ if it wasn't for this entrepreneur that had, asset, that had land, that was able to be used, his assets to bring our Lord to resurrection. I think it was then, this is 15 years ago, that I really kind of started seeing that it was actually not entrepreneurs that needed to be redeemed, but rather it was our Christian church system and construct that actually was in need of redemption. I probably didn't realize that this was happening with my forming and my thinking at the time, and it was something that was happening subconsciously. I will say, though, that over the last few years, the Lord has absolutely blessed me by bringing together lots of different bands of these misfits, if you will, of high impact, lonely entrepreneurs that care so deeply about God's kingdom. And they just want to use those skills and those assets for good. I'm seeing a growing trend in conversations just recently, especially exacerbated since COVID. There's a growing trend in the conversations that entrepreneurs, they want to be called. They want to be called like Nehemiah. Yesterday, I was in a conversation with an entrepreneur, Philip, and he was talking about Nehemiah. And I said, I've actually never seen it this way. You're exactly right. He was an innovator. Let's go rebuild society /wall foundations. And I'm going to take all the risks possible to go do this. And so come along with me and help fix these broken foundations of our society. This is a growing movement. And so I think that's what's attracted me so much to this ongoing conversation of redemptive entrepreneurship. I believe wholeheartedly that in many instances, as I kind of transition here, and as Ruth was talking about, I'm now the executive director of an organization, not-for-profit, called Thrive for Good. I believe in many instances, our compassion and our charity, it's actually done harm as well. It's actually done hurt. Bruce alluded to this a little bit when he was talking. And, to be brutally honest and simply put, we often take away the entrepreneurial spirit of those that we are helping. Innovation, risk. We don't leave them any margin to innovate and to take risks. And this was something that, helped me kind of transition here the last 2 years, moving into Thrive for Good and what attracted me. And I'll get into that. I remember when I shared when I was a kid and how I was probably around 8 years old, and asked my parents for a $325 loan. And, that loan to buy that first lawnmower. It just certainly makes me think now back to development work in developing countries of the global South. I grew up in an environment that fostered risk-taking. It fostered innovation. My parents, they loaned me cash. They didn't give it to me. And it's one of those of where now I think about development work as well, right? And how so much it is just give away or hand out, the common terminology versus a hand up. So this is what motivated me to really kind of, move over to Thrive for Good. And the founders of Thrive for Good, Linda Bolton, she's a social entrepreneur and runs a social enterprise that the profits and proceeds fuel a lot of the work that Thrive does. And then her husband, Dale Bolton, the founder, he's also an innovator. Sometimes I call Einstein in the back. And, it's one of those of where what attracted me is at Thrive, when I was introduced, it was for $15. That can support an individual sustainably, meaning just one time. We work with community gardens, and we empower people with training and simple tools to help them grow an abundance of healthy, organic, disease-fighting foods for life sustainably. And yeah, when I first caught this attention, it's for $15. And when you unpack it economically speaking, it's a 10x return on investment, of what it does in the community. It's absolutely incredible. So yeah, what the biggest difference for Thrive, and to get into a little bit of details of specifically at Thrive what we do, it's a focus on nutrition. A lot of times, I've traveled to a lot of countries through Africa and Southeast Asia, and a lot of times in developing communities, people suffer a lot from lack of nutrition. And it's an ongoing cycle that goes, of a downward spiral where, the food that has happened in food security, It's empty carbs. It's a complete empty diet, and there's no nutrition in the diet. A lot of times, at least in where we work in East Africa, a lot of times the diet, it's 90% plus of corn. It has no nutrients, no nutritional density in diets. And so what ends up happening is we call it hidden hunger, where a lot of the communities that we work in, people, they might be well fed and they might have calories for the day, but starving from nutrition and don't have nutrition to be healthy. How can you be an entrepreneur, and how can you, be productive in society when there's so much sickness and disease? In all my work, I've probably been to 15 or 20 different communities in East Africa to where we have Thrive Life Garden projects. I've never seen healthier people in my entire life. Sometimes there's this envy of I wish I had access, that I could just walk out any time of the year and harvest my meals straight out of the garden, because this is often common the case in most of the communities we work in. I think specifically on the entrepreneurship, as I mentioned, one of the biggest metrics that we measure at Thrive is actually sustainability. And we define sustainability meaning when we provide the investment of what we call first seed to get a project in a community going. The first seed, it lasts for about 18 months as, their gardens get up and going and start producing and harvesting. And, after 18 months, 65% of our projects are sustainable. Simply put, it just means we don't fund it any further, and they continue and they keep going. We believe that by strengthening communities like it's because they already have land, they already have people, they already have relationships. We're using the assets that communities already have. And this very method, by identifying champions locally to run with it, it's actually restoring dignity, and it's restoring entrepreneurship. So, for me, this is actually about redeeming that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's, I'll give you one quick testimony. When I first started working with Thrive, I heard a story of a mother, single mother with 4 kids. And once she started life gardening and she had her own project, within about 4 months, she actually was sustainable with the project. And in less than 9 months, she had saved up enough by selling surplus of extra vegetables at the market. She bought her first mattress, first time in her life. And she was probably around mid-30s. She's ever slept on a mattress. And she did it. It was all her. She planted the garden, she harvested, she went to the market, she innovated, she sold the extra in the surplus, and you could start seeing dignity restored. And it's stories like these that actually drive me. And, to see that redemption of entrepreneurship in developing countries, in developing communities, really where my heart and passion lies. And now taking that back to where I shared as well, this growing trend here in North America, there's also a hunger as well, as I mentioned, where, so many people are starting to talk about wanting to be part of the better, wanting to be part of the good and, God's kingdom. And I think I'm really hopeful for the future of those of us of entrepreneurs and how we're actually going to make such a difference in the world.
Thank you very much, James. I know that we are already slated to go over on our webinar. We hope that you can stay with us to the end, but if not, I will just give you a brief overview. Ruby is going to be sharing with us about managing your finances around giving and a few other great things. You'll love Ruby. And Peter is kind of going to give us the philanthropy charity aspect, just so that you have a heads up in case you need to go. Let me just introduce Ruby. She is the Director of Business Development at Stillwater Capital, one of North America's leading mid-market M&A advisors. She is responsible for assisting companies seeking to merge, acquire, sell, value, or obtain financing. As a multi-credited financial professional, she draws from her broad experiences in public accounting, entrepreneur, controller, owner, top financial, and investment management practice, and business development and investment banking across a wide variety of industries. Curious by nature, she obtained her degree and numerous respected industry credentials and designations over her 30 years of experience. Her reputation is based on integrity, results, independent thinking, and mutual respect. A leader in her profession, she is focused on helping individuals and companies make smart decisions about their finances and creating peace of mind regarding key financial decisions at critical times. Ruby, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. You know what, I don't have to do my PowerPoint presentation because I know we're running a little bit late. All I really want to do is share my heart. That, like many of these people have already shared, I grew up feeling like a bit of a fish out of water, grew up in a great big home. I'm the 10th of 13 kids, gifted in money management. Mom was, fresh off the boat from Holland. Dad was a farmer in Southern Ontario who sponsored my mother's family. So you can imagine what it was like for me growing up with, not wasting food and being very entrepreneurial. There was no other option except we all worked. Dad had a job and he had 2 businesses on the side. And when I was very young, very entrepreneurial, always doing something to earn some money growing up. And our family started going to a very conservative fundamentalist Baptist church where my entrepreneurial passion and money-making passion was very questioned and made to think, well, there might be something quite not right with me. In a way, I know they didn't mean it intentionally, and it was a wonderful place to grow up and learn business fundamentals. But started a career. Loved accounting, got brought into accounting from university because accountants are supposed to add integrity to information. Accounting was actually my worst subject in university. I couldn't believe it when my prof said, Ruby, you should be a CA. And I'm like, I hate bookkeeping. And he's like, that's not what we do. And I said, okay. Quickly ended up going in after public accounting to starting businesses with some other partners in entrepreneurship. Started doing some financial restructuring, strategic restructuring. Anybody ever had a bad partnership that didn't work out the way you anticipated? Well, it did for me. So after making that not working out, I really was challenged by a girlfriend of mine at KPMG to go into financial planning. Again, I said, financial planners, those are snake oil salesmen. I don't want to be one of those. I can't believe you think I would be one of those. And she said, well, maybe you should be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought to myself, well, I'll try it. And if it doesn't work out, I've got plan B and C and D and everything else. 25 years later, God really blessed me. I think it's because, quite frankly, when I went into financial planning, I bought 2 cases of God's way of managing money, biblical principles under stewardship. And I said, you know what, God, I don't really feel I belong here, but if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it this way, and the rest is up to you. 25 years later, I was the top 1% financial advisor in Canada. God has a sense of humor. I'm the 10th of 13 kids from small town, like who'd have thunk? And was very blessed, but again, God disrupted me, and I lost 3 very key employees very sadly in 1 month, 2 to cancer, 1 to a very serious mental health crisis. And I got an unsolicited offer to buy my practice and ended up doing what I'm doing right now. And I'm sharing this because even when I went into financial planning, for those of us who understand biblical financial principles, there's this thing that God owns it all. It's not really ours. And that giving isn't just a whole bunch of set of rules. There's a wonderful book called Plastic Donuts. God really cares about what's in our heart, not that we followed the rule of, tithing the 10% or whatever it is. For some people, it might not be 10% because they don't have 10%. They're a single mother and they're living, paycheck to paycheck. But it's between us and our God. And so in my practice, I made a focus in my practice of showing clients how to give money away, which is kind of weird when I get paid by assets under administration and I'm giving them, encouraging my clients to give them away. But that's what God did, and that's how he chose to bless me in my practice. And then, so I had no plans of retiring. I don't believe in retirement. I know I was like a retirement planner, but it wasn't, I never intended to retire. And then I'm one of the founding members of Advisors with Purpose, which then became Kingdom Advisors. Canada joined with the American group, and we had this great conference called Disrupted. So I prayed, Lord, disrupt me for your will. Guess what he did? He really disrupted me. He disrupted me very much, ended up selling my business. And here I was, my whole world kind of shook up about, I'm not 100 years old, but I felt like I wasn't old enough to really retire yet. And for years and years, I've kept this little card from a ladies' retreat on my mirror in my bathroom to always remind me. It's 1 Peter 4:10. God has given gifts to each of you from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Manage them well so that God's generosity can flow through you. And I'm updating my email address with Stillwater, whom I had met a couple of times before at a Kingdom Advisors conference, when he said, I've been praying and you're the one. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then in our discussions, so I went from helping our clients give money away in the publicly traded stock area. So just one example, I love to buy things on sale, comes from being the 10th of 13 kids. And so I love stock market crashes. I know nobody else does, don't hold it against me, but I do, because I like to buy things undervalued. Call me weird, but I do. So one very famous Canadian company called Fairfax Financial goes through a crisis. Nobody knows why its stocks are falling. This was like, a couple of crises ago. Stocks fall to $100 a share. I'm thinking, I don't think they're worth that. He's got this 35-year track record of 20% compounded growth. So I buy, right? And actually I started buying, anytime I buy something, usually it goes down, started buying at about $160 a share, and it goes all the way to $100 a share. And clients were upset because I started buying it at 169 and it goes all the way down to 100. You would be upset too. And one of my clients came in, and it was this very small, like say $5,000 out of a $4 million portfolio. We're not talking, I'm an accountant, I'm not high risk. And I said, I want you to buy more, but I'm going to challenge you, because he wasn't a giver. He was a believer. He was, young, professional, high income, high net worth, but he had an issue and I didn't know what it was. And I was trying to encourage him to gift. And I said, and I will too, but any stock we buy today, can we both agree that anything we buy today, we're going to give it to God's work? And that was the day Fairfax stock was like $100. Long story short, we have this huge global financial crash. Fairfax goes up to $400 from $100 in 2006. And we do what we promised, or, we donate those shares. And to make a long story short, I made money giving money away, because had I not given those stocks away, I would have paid the capital gains on it. I saved the capital gains. God's charities, God's purposes got a tremendous amount of money. And, I just was very, very blessed. So it's just something I've been involved in, and a huge, like always in my career, bringing these ideas. Many of my clients who were not believers were happy to do this strategy because nobody really shared it. And with Stillwater, in mergers and acquisitions, we deal with private companies, and the rules are more complicated, a little bit different, but there are ways that as entrepreneurs and business owners, you can actually, put what we say in practice, that God owns it all. We can actually start giving our shares to God, avoiding the capital gains, and having this money to be used for God's kingdom purposes. So I know it's a complicated topic. I didn't want to do too many slides about it, but really talk to a good professional who isn't going to talk you out of doing donations because they get paid by the assets under management. And in mergers and acquisitions, my whole passion is Stillwater's got this amazing track record of 100% of the businesses that they help clients divest, they sell for more, and on average about 54% more. And that was the trigger for God to, like, what he said to me was, I need you here to share with people how to give more money away. So we deal with clients between 15 million and 250. Even take a $15 million enterprise sale. If we get them 54%, my favorite line has been and will be, if that was you were willing to accept 12 million and we sold your business for 42, why do you think God blessed you? To increase your standard of living, or maybe to increase your standard of giving? And that God can do incredibly more with us, with our resources, with our businesses than we ever thought imaginable. And that's my passion, is to use where God plants me. Thank you, John. Plants me to spread that news to other people that we've been so blessed. And all, let's share, let's give back from out of our great abundance. We don't need more stuff. The world doesn't need more stuff. Just like with food, in a way, we just need to be more efficient with food, not necessarily consume more of it. So thank you. I hope I didn't speak too quickly.
Thank you so much, Ruby. That was really great. And it's great to have those examples of where it actually benefited your clients when they felt like they were going to be losing. We're going to wrap up with Peter Robelin. After 30 years of pastoral, well, actually I introduced you earlier, didn't I? So we'll get right to your discussion and we'll let you chat. And then I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions that you would like to ask our panelists, when Peter, you can enter your questions at any time. If you just go to the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button you can press, and feel free to enter your questions now and we'll come back to them at the end if you have time to stick around and chat with us. Peter, it's over to you.
Great, thank you. And it's just been a delight to listen to all of my fellow panelists. It's been very encouraging and inspiring, so thank you. For me, for a number of years, I have felt a growing dis-ease with both the charitable and philanthropic sectors. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, I began to articulate some of that dis-ease with a few colleagues and friends. And every time I had one of these conversations, the other person readily affirmed my concerns with their own. And it seems that for many of us, the way that we do charity, the way that we do philanthropy is not all that it could be or should be. There's a brokenness and a dysfunction on both sides, and certainly in our relationship one with the other. Now, I'm not at all suggesting that we do away with charity, that we do away with philanthropy. There's always a need for charity in its purest form: the cup of cold water, a warm meal, a safe place to sleep, shelter from war and slavery, and, not but, and we need so much more to bring hope and healing to the brokenness of this world. So yeah, I've been a pastor for 30 years. I've been now the president of the Charis Foundation for 10 years. And I've come to this settled conviction that our God-given mission of bringing hope and healing to the world cannot happen through the church alone, or through charities alone, or through huge foundations alone, or through governments alone. It's simply not happening. And one of the things that has been missing in our story is the engagement of business. We've somehow relegated the biblical story of God's redemptive work to the church and to charities, and we've forgotten about the crucial role that business can and should play. We've created an artificial divide between kind of church and charity on the one side and business on the other side. And this is where praxis and the concept of redemptive entrepreneurship comes in for me. It is a corrective to the traditional charity model. And at the very least, redemptive entrepreneurship is a good alternative to add to the good work that so many of us want to be doing. More and more, we're understanding that in order to bring hope and healing, we need something different than what many charities are doing, and what many funders are doing, and what most churches are doing, and what most governments are doing. We need to see business fully engaged as a key partner in the story of God's renewal and redemption. And if I can, I just want to talk about Africa for just a minute. In Africa, the need for good jobs is enormous. We have over the decades poured billions, if not trillions of dollars of aid and charity into Africa, and there has been much good done, but not nearly enough. It's estimated that in sub-Saharan Africa, 450 million new workers will enter the workforce by 2035. And it's estimated that only 100 million new jobs will be created in that same time. And that leads to a devastating conclusion that 350 million new jobs are needed in sub-Saharan Africa alone by 2035. So we can continue to provide clean water and food supplements and increase access to healthcare and education. But without jobs, most of Africa will continue to live in generational poverty. And where do these jobs come from? Well, we know that 80% of all new jobs around the world will be created by SMEs, small and medium enterprises. And one of the many problems for SMEs in Africa is that they have no access to capital for scaling their businesses. And yet SMEs are the best hope for some of those 350 million new workers to find jobs. So what can we be doing to help redemptive entrepreneurs start new businesses? What can we be doing to help existing redemptive businesses scale significantly? And what can we do to help existing businesses that might only be ethical get to that redemptive stage where they're part of God's blessing to the world around them? And that's what we've been thinking about and talking about and learning about for the last few years. And we have had so many Zoom calls and so many meetings with different organizations that are already involved in this space or are learning how to do it, kind of like we are. And this whole field is still relatively young. There's lots of things happening, but there's lots of progress yet to be made. And it's been great to hear what the panelists on this call have had to share. A few of the things that we specifically are going to do at Charis is we're going to continue to grant to Christian charities that are registered in Canada. That's the core work that we do. And through those charities, there's work being done all over the world. But as we grant, we're going to be more interested in seeing how we can help each other to operate more in this redemptive entrepreneurial space. Maybe by providing seed grants for local charities to begin social enterprises and to find ways to partner with local businesses to see God's kingdom advance. We'll also be looking into investment opportunities with small and medium enterprises that are well positioned to scale. So not only will our granting dollars be more directed in this space, but we want to see more of our balance sheet invested in these kinds of opportunities. Each year we give away about 7% of our assets in granting, but we want to see more of our 93% invested in redemptive business opportunities. We're also thinking about creating a network of subject area experts that could be used as coaches and mentors and guides to help charities or funders or entrepreneurs that want to play in this unique space. And we want to advance the concept of redemptive entrepreneurship within our own network for charity leaders and business leaders and funders, bringing them all together, hosting gatherings for them, being on webinars like this where we can share knowledge and concept and ideas. And as a final thought, the redemptive frame that I shared with you at the beginning, it was set up to be applicable to business. I think it actually works for charities and churches and foundations as well. And so we're asking ourselves, how can we, the Charis Foundation, be more redemptive? How can our relationship with our charitable partners be good beyond the writing of a check? How can charities function more like the redemptive agencies that they are intended to be? How can churches be more redemptive so that who they are and what they do is good, not just for themselves, but for the greater community and for all of creation? For us, these are all challenging and good questions to ponder. And with that, I'll hand it back to Ruth.
Well, I'd just like to open up the floor. Thank you all for your comments in the chat box. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask the panelists? I know, David, you asked about what kind of professionals, Peter, are you looking for in that group?
Yeah, great question, David. So some of the expertise is here on this panel. Some of the people that have been doing this, like Bruce is doing this actively within his business. So he'd be a great coach and a great mentor. In terms of the investment side, maybe Ruby would be a great mentor or coach or and subject area expert that can come alongside. So we're looking for all kinds of people that have business acumen, people that know the culture on the ground. We need experts and coaches and mentors, not just from the global north, but primarily from the global south, where we're hoping to see some of these enterprises emerge. So we're looking for people on the ground that have business experience and financial experience and are keenly sensitive to the whole concept of being good for all, that redemptive edge. So there may be other thoughts on that.
Yeah, Ruth, to me, it's one of the most exciting parts is that the present model is you take a Christian and you ignore all the capacity that God's built into them, and you have them do something that the local person should do or could do themselves. So you take an accountant and they go and they help build a house while the local tradesman watches them build a house for free. Meanwhile, that organization is struggling because they don't know how to be accountable with their bookkeeping and transparent. And, so one of the exciting things is everything that people are doing is actually potentially applicable. If you're in marketing, if you're in sales, if you're in management or strategy, that's all very useful in the developing world and here. And if you're starting a business up here, you can go to whatever it's called in downtown Toronto, the Mars Discovery District or Communitech in Waterloo or whatever. You can get all these resources. If you're over there, there's not as much available. But what we're doing is we're also putting together a network of people who are willing to be mentors remotely. And all you need is some kind of capacity that you have in these areas, and you have to have traveled. Otherwise, you can't recommend something that's potentially applicable. And you're just a resource that people can reach out to. So that's the exciting part is actually your whole church, you don't ignore 90% of what God's been doing in people's lives. You make use of that.
Yeah, that's really well said, Bruce. And travel is really applicable. For anyone who's traveled to Africa, you know that the environment and the culture are very, very different. And even how, a basic thing like building a building in Africa, there's an assumption that you, the person that built it, actually have ownership of it. And so it's your job to come back and fix it. So just a simple cultural difference like that can make a big difference. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. And we hope that we can continue this conversation. We'll probably be scheduling another one with another group of panelists in the next month. Thank you very much again for joining us.